So welcome back. This is my second video on the So Crafty crochet kit to make your own otter. The first video was uploaded before Christmas 2020 and pointed out that there were no instruction booklet in the box. I have now sourced the instruction booklet and I was able to actually get it and download it from the Aldi website. So I will put a link into the description below for that pattern, just in case this has happened to some other people. Now, the previous videos that I've done on the Aldi kits, people have been asking for me to create tutorials. I will not be doing full tutorials because that would be a copyright issue. Not be doing full tutorials because that would be a copyright issue. I am not the designer of these crochet kits and therefore I cannot do a full crochet tutorial, but I will give you hints and tips throughout the video, things like how to make increases and decreases and such like, and little tips on how to follow the pattern. The crochet kit does give a skill level of 2 out of 3 stars. Now that would indicate to me that this would be an intermediate kit, and having made several of these previously, I would say yes, these are more of an intermediate level kit, not really suitable for an absolute beginner. Now the kits do come with these bright green, very flimsy plastic crochet hook and yarn needle. Now my concern here is because you're going to be working tight, as it's amigurumi, these could easily snap while you're working, so I'm actually going to do away with these. Now it doesn't state in the pattern or on the box what size crochet hook this is, but I can tell you it is a size 3, so I'm going to replace it with my Aldi swing hook, which is a size 3. I'm also going to do away with the plastic needle, and I will actually be using one of my own metal yarn needles. And the other thing you are going to need, which is not supplied, is a stitch marker. This is amigurumi, which means crocheting in a continuous spiral, and you will need to mark the last stitch of every round using your stitch marker and move it up with you as you go. One of the things I don't like about the yarns in these kits is how tightly they've wound the wool around the body of the yarn. Look, it's so tight and it actually stretches the yarn. You will be working in continuous rounds, which means you're not slip stitching and joining at the end of every round. So the easy bit to begin with is, now the pattern says chain 1 and then tells you to make 6 double crochet in that first chain. That's really awkward to do, so I would recommend you make 2 chain and then put your 6 double crochet into that first round. It just gives you a little bit more maneuverability. And then on your 6th stitch, that's the one you're going to mark with your marker. So that tells you it's the end of the round. When it comes to increasing, the pattern will only say ink 6 times. Now, as a beginner moving to intermediate, that might be a bit confusing for you. What that actually means is you're going to put 2 double crochet in each of those 6 stitches. So we're going to go 1, 2. That's an increase. 2 double crochets in the same stitch, repeating it 6 times, meaning 2 double crochet in each of the 6 stitches. Take the marker out the last stitch, put my last 2 stitches in there, and then place my marker into the last one that I've made. Now you'll notice we have got a hole. This is because I did 2 chain to begin with and that I've put my 6 double crochet into the first chain. when you do just a single chain, it does make that hole a lot tighter, but it does make it a little bit more difficult to maneuver yourself to get those stitches in. So before I make this any bigger, what I'm actually going to do is I will weave this end in and close that hole using the tail. What I'm actually doing is I'm creating a running stitch around those first 6 double crochets. This isn't great yarn. It keeps catching. Okay, so now that I've gone round, created a running stitch all the way around, what I can do is I can now pull that tail tight. Alright, and it's closed up the hole. And then just weave my thread back and forth. This is on the wrong side of the work, which means it'll be on the inside and it won't get seen. Okay, so as you follow the pattern, you'll notice that there are square brackets of information, and each piece of information within the square brackets is separated by a comma. So my next round, I have square brackets, which is repeated information that I will repeat 6 times, but the 2 separate pieces of information within the brackets are increase. So if you remember on the previous round, increase is 2 double crochets into the same stitch, and then a DC in the next one. So that's the information. We're going to repeat that 6 times. And I move my marker up into the last stitch that I made of that round. For round 7 and round 8, there is quite a lot of information on the round for you. Break this down, so each instruction is broken up with a comma. So if you work, for example, the 8 double crochet first, and then mark it off when you've done it, then do your increase, mark it off, so on and so forth. That way you won't get lost as you make the round, and you should keep the right number of stitches when you get to the end. It's always handy to have a post-it note or some way of marking the instructions as you go along so that you do not get lost. So now we need to change our colour. We need to go from the mid brown to the light brown, and what we'll do is we'll do this in our last stitch of the round. We will start our next stitch off as normal. You see this is the one with my marker in, so I know it's the last stitch of the round. So I'm going to draw up the loop for my double crochet in the mid brown, and then I'm just going to drop that one, and then I'm going to pick up the light brown, the colour that I need to change to, and I'm going to finish the double crochet off with the light brown, so yarn round and taking through the 2 loops. Let me show you that again. So we're going to put our hook into our stitch, draw up the loop in the existing colour, I'm going to drop that one down. We're going to pick up our new colour and draw that through the 2 loops of our double crochet. Give the old colour a little bit of a tug to pull the stitch tight, and then we can tighten up the loop on our hook as well. We're going to insert our hook into that last stitch that we made, which is the previous colour, and we've got the loop of the new colour ready for the next round. So what we're going to do now is we're going to trap the tail and some of the old colour under some of the stitches. So I've put my hook in the next stitch, and I'm just going to double crochet around the tails just for a couple of stitches. Obviously following the pattern, which on this round is actually double crochet in each stitch round. Once I've gone over the tails of a few of the stitches, I can then cut the previous colour and then continue the round in the new colour. So when the pattern says DEC, deck, this means decrease. There are a couple of ways to do this. The one that most people know would be to insert their hook in the next stitch, pick up the yarn, insert their hook into the next stitch, pick up the yarn, and we have 3 loops on our hook, and then you yarn round and go through all 3 of them. The trouble I find with a decrease like this is it becomes quite bulky with 3 loops. So when I'm making amigurumi or anything with a continuous spiral and we're looking at the right side of the work all the time, I like to do something called an invisible decrease. You're still going to be using the next 2 stitches to make your decrease. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up the front loop of the first stitch and then pick up the front loop of the second stitch. Then we're going to yarn round and bring that through both of those loops so that we've still got our 2 loops for our double crochet, and then we yarn round and take both off. That's my preferred decrease. So we're now on the muzzle, and I have already noticed that with the instructions telling you to start with 3 chain, then the stitch count is not going to work. So we're actually going to start with 4 chain. Okay, and I'll be working into the back bumps, so not the front of the chain here. I turn my chain over and you can see these little bumps on the back. That's where I'm going to work. We're going to start in the second chain from the hook, so that back bump is my first chain, there's my second. So we're going to start there, and we're going to put a double crochet in each of the next 2. So there's 1, there's 2, and in this last chain we're going to put 2 double crochet. Now it tells you to work on the other side of the chain, so we've worked one side and we're actually going to work along this side now. So I'm going to turn it over, and the reason I use the back bumps is so that when I turn a chain over to work in the other side, I can see the chain stitches that I want to work into. So we are going to put a double crochet in the first 2, so 2 DC, so there's 1 and 2, and then in the last double crochet that's where we're going to put 2 DC. Very tiny. We've worked on both sides of the chain, so the chain itself is in the middle here, and we've got stitches across the top and across the bottom, and we are still working in a continuous spiral, so you're still going to want your stitch marker in your last stitch. So that's at the end of round 6. We have 30 stitches. Now here is where we're going to fasten off, but you see how we've got quite a bit of height at the end of round 6. If we fasten off there, we're going to have that same height. I like to tidy it up a bit by slip stitching into the next stitch, which just brings it down to roughly the same level as that round, and then fasten off. And you're going to want to give yourself enough thread to be able to sew it onto the head. With the ears, you might find that they'll curl up like this as you're making them. when you get to the last stitch, just pop them over like that, so that you've got the right sides on the outside, and then fasten off. Again, you need to leave yourself enough tail to sew them onto the head, and you'll notice, you see the hole is a bit big on this one. Once you fold it over, you can still notice it. If you don't like that, then what you can do, pop it in the other way round so it's on the wrong side, use your tail and create a running stitch over these stitches and pull it tight. It's a little fiddly. So what I'm going to do, inserting my needle in between the stitches, so down that one, up that one, down the next hole, up the next, get the tail through, down the next one, up the next, down, and then up. When you've gone all the way around, okay, so just give that a tug. You see how it closes it right up for you. Then weave in the end and then turn it through to the right side, and you'll see that the hole is closed. Then you'll fold them in half, ready to sew onto the head. When you get to the end of the body, here's a little tip. You're going to need to leave yourself a long tail for sewing the body to the head. I also like to put a slip stitch at the end of the last round before I fasten it off, just to bring the height of that body back down in line with the rest of it. Okay, so we're working on the heart. The beginning of the heart is, the pattern is very similar to the rest of the other elements. And when we get to round 8, it changes a little bit. So we're going to start by making 2 chain. We are going to skip the next 13 stitches and slip stitch, and we're going to continue working around this left hand side back to the stitch marker. So we are going to put 1 double crochet in each stitch round. So that's what they mean by work around the top left side, including the stitch where my stitch marker is, because that's the last stitch there of that round, but it's not going to be the last stitch of the round, because we now need to put a double crochet in the back bumps of the chain. 1 and 2. So that would now become the last stitch of the round. So I'm going to put my stitch marker in there. Okay, and we're going to decrease 6 times. Now this is another alternative way that I like to do decrease, especially when it comes to closing off the top of something. So what I'll do is I'll do a double crochet in the next one, and then I'll actually skip, miss one, pull it tight, and then do another DC. I'll jump over the next one and do a DC in the next one. Just be sure to pull it tight, and you're going to need a little bit of a tail so that we can close off the top of the heart. We need to rejoin our yarn so that we can do the right hand side. So I'm actually going to rejoin with a slip stitch in there, and then we are going to make 12 DC, and we have to do a DC in each of the 2 chain loops. You remember at the beginning here, on there, and one there. That's become my last stitch of the round. So there's the heart. Go ahead and stuff that, and then we'll have a look at how we join all the pieces together. Now that we have all of the pieces for the otter, we can begin stitching together. I will cover this in a second video. Please join me next time on Unravel and Unwind. If you've enjoyed the video, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel so you get notifications of new videos, and I'll look forward to seeing you again soon.